From an inauguration to legislative actions, this is a busy week in the nation's capital. And here to explain it all is Tennessee 1st District Congresswoman Diana Harshbarger. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for asking.
Well, this week, history was made in Washington with the swearing in of Donald Trump for his second term in the nation's capital. Now, there were lots of changes to that celebration. What exactly was that day like for you?
Well, there were a lot of changes, but it went fantastically. We did the swearing in the rotunda. They allowed the members of the House and the Senate to be there, and they had some special guests, but it went very smoothly, and the president was very succinct in his address, and he told us exactly what he was going to do, and he was maybe 30 minutes of his speech. So we know what our mandate is. The American people told us what they wanted us to do, and he reiterated that at the inaugural speech.
Well, we know that there were a number of executive orders issued by President Trump just hours after being sworn in. How exactly does that set the pace for his presidency this time?
It's lightning fast, because I think it was close to 200 executive orders so far. Really, the first executive orders were about the border. He reinstated the Remain in Mexico policy. He stopped the catch and release program. He sent National Guard to the border. And even today, we found out the Pentagon will be sending, 1,500 troops to the border over the next month. You know, there's a lot of things that have been instituted that will secure that border. And he also signed executive orders about energy dominance here in the United States. So he's going to drill, baby, drill. And with those executive orders, we're going to be able to change the way that permits and leasing take place. You know, he's talked to, to Canada about reinstating the Keystone XL pipeline. You know, they want to get oil out. We need oil. So we're going to do that. There's just so many things. And once you are energy dominant and you're energy independent, that'll bring the rate of inflation down. So there's a lot of things in the works. He also did pardons for the January 6th people who are still being incarcerated. Some have been charged. We have people down at the DC jail as of yesterday and maybe today that are trying to get them released, because once you have a pardon, we know there's paperwork. They're trying to get those men and women out of jail and back to their normal lives.
You know, speaking of that, that was a pretty controversial move for the president. Do you think that was the right one for him to make?
Absolutely. That's one of the promises he made to the American people. If you look at what Biden did in the middle of President Trump's speech. He pardoned his whole family preemptively. Also, the January 6th Commission, he pardoned them preemptively. How many pardons did he give murderers and rapists and child molesters? Look, there is nothing wrong with what President Trump did. These people were incarcerated and they shouldn't have been. If they did something wrong, I'm sure they looked at those records, but he's just going by the mandate, and the promises he made are the promises he's going to keep. And a lot of them are going to be done immediately with executive orders.
Now, here in our area, one man, his name's Albuquerque Head. He's actually from Kingsport. He pled guilty back in 2022 to a couple of charges from that day, and they included assaulting, resisting, and impeding an officer. Now, court documents say that he took riot shields from Capitol Police and then hit them with it, and later he wrapped an arm around an officer's neck and then pulled that officer into the crowd of the rioters. Now, he was well into his several-year sentence in prison. What's your take on someone who admitted his role in violence against a police officer now being released?
Did he give him a pardon? That's my first question. And let me just tell you what some of these January 6 people have told us. The FBI has a way of entrapping you, and you have no other choice besides pleading to get whatever sentence they decide they want to give you. And so you got to look a little deeper into these allegations and into the things that that's being reported. If they plead guilty, that's one thing. But, you know, I don't know if he was pardoned. I have no idea. I haven't looked at the list of the names from the January 6 pardons. But the FBI has a way of entrapping you and asking you to plead guilty to things that you may not have done.
So he did plead guilty and he has already been released. Are you concerned about him coming back into the district?
No, I'm not concerned. I mean, if he's been released, if he's coming back to the district, I'm sure that if he did he have any kind of felonies or any charges prior to this? That's one question. And then I'm sure he's going to be on the radar of the sheriff's department and the local police department. So I'm not really worried. If there is an instance that something happens, I need to be made aware of it so we can report that.
All right, well, let's go ahead and switch gears now and talk a little bit about TikTok and the support its sale to a U.S.-owned company. Now, you supported that. President Trump did sign an executive order pausing that ban, but since the company didn't comply with the law by the deadline this week, do you think TikTok should be allowed to operate here in the U.S.?
Listen, it was a unanimous vote, and it wasn't a ban, it was a divestment. They are obligated to sell to a company that we approve of and the Congress and the president approve of because they are considered a national security threat. The pause on the sale gives the president time, gives Congress time to decide, well, who is going to take over? And so we understand, and the president does as well, that they are a national security threat. And China is an adversarial nation, and ByteDance is the owner of that. So we understand all the implications, but we're trying to resolve this because you have 170 million Americans who have downloaded that app, and they depend on that. Just like the president said, there's an economic implication if you do away with that or if you just cut that app off. But we're going to work out, and I'm sure President Trump will bring something to the table that we'll approve.
Well, President Donald Trump is actually expected to travel to western North Carolina later this week. And Northeast Tennessee, as you know, is still heavily affected by Hurricane Helene. Do you think the federal government has done enough for aid here in our region?
Look, you can never do enough to replace somebody's home or their land or what they've lost. I mean, they'll never recoup everything. But the president's traveling to western North Carolina. He understands what happened in my district in East Tennessee. And I'm sure there'll be, we voted on the disaster relief for the area for, 6, 7 states and any of the counties that were affected. So he said he was going to take care of it, and I have to take him at his word.
Well, is there anything else that you would like to see done with disaster relief here in our area?
Well, I want the families to get the aid that they deserve. If FEMA has denied them, I want them to reapply. My office is there to help them with that. If there's anything that these counties do not have, we want the aid that is that FEMA promised, and through the disaster relief that was given to Tennessee, we want Tennessee to put that in the counties that need it. And I don't want them to withhold it. And I know there's some talk about that. I want them to get the disaster relief they need, and the money that they've already spent, I want them to be repaid. And if there is an issue, they need to contact me directly. Contact my office, and we'll look into that.
Well, I know that you've got a big year ahead. So what exactly are your legislative priorities for 2025?
Well, I serve on Energy and Commerce, and that's going to be a huge committee when it comes to reconciliation and the energy policies. We have authority over the energy policies that President Trump wants to instate, and we have healthcare policy that we have to look at with HHS, and there's a whole lot we can do with just those 2 subcommittees. I'm also on the Commerce subcommittee. We'll deal with a lot of things coming down. Look at what we just talked about, the infrastructure with Stargate, with AI. That's the committee that has jurisdiction over AI as well. So there's a lot coming down the pike, and it's coming at the speed of light. So we just have to be ready to tackle that. First, we've got to get a budget passed. We've got to get through reconciliation. We've got to get appropriations done. And the Senate has to follow suit.
All right, Congresswoman Diana Harshbarger, thank you for taking the time this afternoon to chat with us.
Yes, ma'am. My pleasure.
All right. Well, we've got plenty more coming up here this afternoon, so stick with us. We'll be right back.